What is going on YouTube? It's been a while, I've been busy, but I'll leave that for another video. Now I'm back with another successful collaboration, this time with Evano. Now if you're not familiar with Evano, I'll leave a link to his Instagram in the description below. Make sure to check it out. It's worth mentioning that I've reached out to Evano a few years ago when I first started car photography and had a question. And the guy actually replied via email. That's so kind of you, Evano. Now Evano is going to walk us through a 30 minutes video with a lot of layers stacked up in Photoshop, just explaining the process. Now this shoot was done in 2016, so he doesn't have all the original files. I'm pretty sure you guys will have a lot of questions. So if you do so, go ahead and ask him on his Instagram account or leave a comment in the description below and he will get back to you. All right, without any further ado, Evano, the floor is all yours.
Hey guys, what's up? My name's Evano. I am an automotive photographer that specializes in commercial and editorial work. First off, I'd like to thank Mo for providing me with the opportunity to come onto his channel and talk to you guys a little bit about what it is that I do. Also, to build a little bit of context, I've been shooting cars since 2008 and quickly became obsessed with the overall process of creating an image. I quickly got into shooting some content on the editorial side of the market for Stance Nation and Stance Works, and that was the ultimate, I'd say, point in which I knew I wanted to do photography as a career. To see a little bit of my work, you could head over to my website, www.evogphotography.com, or to see more recent content, you can go to my Instagram, which is @Evo-g, and this will help let you see what I'm doing kind of almost on a daily or a weekly basis. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys a little bit about photo manipulation and compositing and lighting a vehicle and getting a shot from this to this. So for a shot like this, I obviously knew I wanted to do the second 911 Carrera over here, but the tricky thing was I couldn't take the car off the lot that day because this car was in a day going to be in a showroom for the launch event, and it couldn't get dirtied. It was already detailed. So I had to try to think of how I could show this model in two different kind of loud colors that Porsche was offering for the launch event, because we were going to put, at Porsche Rochester, we were going to put the picture on an easel and kind of have it by the car as the car was being launched. So knowing that, it made the idea of the composite a lot easier. So let's jump into the Photoshop file and I'll start to kind of break down the layers. Alright, so here we are at the start of the image. This was the first shot I took, and like I said, knowing that I wanted to have another 911 in there, I gave myself a lot of space on the right hand side there to kind of move the car, and I'll show you that later when we get to it. But first things first, I made a selection. I always make a selection of the car just so I have it separated from everything, and all my adjustments I can do affect the car separate from the background. It's just a kind of a way, and an organized way I work to really start editing the car right off the bat. So then I'm going to kind of click through these layers, and I'll be kind of going off the top of the dome here, so bear with me here. So like first adjustment, I'm going to just darken and desaturate the ground, and obviously since I layer masked it off the car, I can have it so it just affects where I want it to affect, which you can see it goes right to this curb here. So then we start, this is my next layer here will be me shifting my polarizer on my camera and taking a second shot of the car and then merging the hood with this polarized side. So now I have two shots in one already that are essentially both polarized. And this a lot of this stuff cleans up later when we get into the lighting, but we'll get there. This is just a little bit of saturating in color, adding a little bit more blue in there, especially to like some of these spots that are washed out. Just kind of getting the image ready. So then you can just see a bunch of little micro adjustments go on here. But then we get to the bulk of this here. And I've got this stuff in a folder, and this is called lighting. So these are and I'm going to click them on and off here. These are my layers of strobe that I went around the car and flash basically. So there's the side shot, there's the front quarter. We got this little, you can see it if I zoom in here. And you can see too the selection's a little off, but that all gets cleaned up later. So right there, it's for the hood, or for the roof line, and this rim light on the mirror. And then this layer here is going to be for our front bumper. And we're just basically blending all these in. This is for the front there. And now that's the base of where I was at after the base layers of strobe were on it. So I'll click that on and off. It's a totally different vibe. You can see from just like having a polarizer on there to like all these strobe layers, it kind of gives the car almost a totally different shape. And definitely, I think, makes this Miami blue pop a little bit more. So then from there, I started working on top of that image, kind of getting this cleaned up as car number 1. And I darkened things up a little bit. All these little micro adjustments are getting added. Then we get to the wheels, the strobe layers on the wheels. And just for the sake of how I did that, just because I don't have those layers of light in here, I went basically like this. I'm standing behind the wheel here, like this, with the light, right? Basically letting it flash back into me. It's going to spill on that light, create a shadow to our eye, but then it's going to rim light all the spokes. And then I'm coming over here and doing that same thing, slightly behind the wheel, letting it spill across the face of the wheel, creating a nice shadow on our side of all these, creating a nice shadow right here on all these spokes, but then it's giving a nice rim light to the actual design and shape of the wheel. Okay, so let me get rid of all that. And then we got a little bit more contrast for the car. And then you can see I went in and that side mirror was a little too dark, so I brightened up the side mirror a little bit. And then that's pretty much the bulk of the beginning stage of that car. So then what we did was, knowing I wanted to put the second car over here, without moving the tripod, I took the car, we moved it over here, and we parked it there, and we shot it like that. Basically rinse and repeat. We dropped the shadow back in. I kind of wanted the shadow to be on its separate layer, just so I can play with it when we started to get the composite back layer in there. But I actually never ended up needing to do too much with that, which was nice. But so then we start building up the image, and this is right here. This is the polarizer getting spun again, and then merging the top version of the polarizer, because many of you know, using a circular polarizer lens, if I polarize for the side, the back's going to be different, and the back, vice versa, the side will be different. So I like to merge those two a lot of the times when I'm shooting, so I can get this clean kind of look. Even if I wasn't going to like this looks cleaner than something like that. So after we get that all set, add a little bit more contrast, and then we start lighting and strobing, just like the first shot. So there's the rear, there's right there under the tail light, side of the car, front side, a little bit more contrast. It was looking a little too washed out. Then here we go with the wheels again. Rear wheel. These layers here that I'm clicking on, you guys aren't seeing anything, but it's very, very subtle. But I'm doing like little shifts in the blues and the yellows in the using the desaturating filters to just take a little, any weird color shift I was getting in the wheels here compared to the wheels over here, because obviously I want it to match, especially with this car being spec'd with like a gunmetal-ish wheel. I was trying to correct that. So these might be hard for you guys to see, but there is little color shifts going on there. So then let me back out again. This right here is a little from down, I'd say like, I'll just show you guys where I kind of was standing with the light. From about right here, I did a little pop flash just to give me that underneath detail, right? Just to let you know what's going on under there. A little bit more contrast. And that's the thing too, when you're adding so many different layers of light and stuff, it's never perfect, right? So you need to keep kind of tweaking, whether it's coming back into camera raw or it's putting a curved layer and slightly adjusting just a little bit, because one layer might affect the next layer, might affect the next layer. So bringing it back a little bit sometimes is always nice. So then this is the interesting thing. This layer right here, I switched the car over to orange because Porsche was offering the car in a color like this. I went on Google and found the color. At one point, I think I had that picture in here, kind of just over here in the sky, and I was sampling orange, the orange color, and then I used a hue saturating layer, and I can show you guys that actually right here. I'll show you exactly what I did. Hue saturations, and basically you can just slide this and you'll get a couple different colors. Now you have to watch out when you're doing this, because say I wanted to go with it to say something like that, right? It affects all these things that shouldn't be affected, right? Like your tail light. So you're gonna have to go in there and paint those out and layer mask that stuff out. You'll see like a little bit of purple coming in there, pink, and it's affecting the Porsche logo, the brake calipers. That all needs to be layer masked out. So obviously you'd switch back to black on your brush and you paint that out while you're on this layer mask here. You're gonna just paint those out. But that's how I achieved this orange look. But also, again, that's not perfect, right? Like, it's real saturated on orange right here, and over here it's kind of dull. So it still needs a little bit of work, so we're not done there yet. But overall, it's a good start. So then we get to a little bit more contrast again, because I wanted to create a little bit more darkness here and these kind of washed out edges. Then since I did that, I realized that the wheels needed more contrast. Switched the brake calipers over to yellow, and I think I did that originally because I think the spec that I had pulled up had yellow, so I was like, I wanted to make sure I followed suit on what they were doing there. Right here you can see that I went back in. I didn't like this. I didn't think it was popping, so I went back into my circular, like my CPL layers without strobe, and I photoshopped that back in just to give it a little bit more darkness and detail. It was a little too hazy for me. Here's another thing too. So now when I was talking about it being a little bit faded here, and there's this weird, like it's darker and more orange and saturated up here, but down here is starting to get a little faded in color. So I went through with a brush and kind of made a selection and added a little bit of darkness there to say, okay, light is falling off here, and this is where the car shapes. This is where the car's line is essentially starting. And with Porsche, it's a little bit trickier because they're such smooth body lines, but it's still something that needed to be done after I did that hue and saturation to kind of, get back the shape of the car again. So then I was pretty happy at that point with where we were at, so now I was going to start working on the image as a whole again. So here is like fully cleaned up layers of me going in and doing brush work and painting with orange and with lighter orange and with burning and dodging. You can see a lot of the stuff like gets cleaned up through cloning, and it really just kind of fixes, the nastiness of what was going on. Here, I'll show you guys the side too. You guys can see I cleaned up the side skirts that had a little bit of kick up on it. The wheel well, the flare. What else? All these little imperfections of the light posts and stuff, because now we're taking it, you got to remember, we're taking it to a location that doesn't have any of those things. So we have to either, one, make sure you're putting it in a location that does have that stuff if you don't want to do all this reflection work, or you need to take them out. So here I just decided to take them out. So now the car is a lot cleaner, which ultimately I believe I started to do that for the blue car. Yep, right there. So I didn't like how dark that was on the side, and I played around with this a little bit. And then right there's the same effect with the brush tool, selecting panels and putting brush work in there to kind of clean things up a little bit. And obviously you see these next like 4 layers here are dedicated to just cleaning that car up there. Here I'll click on. Just getting the photo ready to be in a totally different location. Really, it's a very tedious process, and a lot of little things go a very long way when you're doing something like this. So we're a little over halfway on this edit, and we're starting to get to the background drop in. These are a little bit more contrast to the wheels, and then here comes the background. So the background, the exact same day, I decided to wait about 2 to 3 more hours after I actually shot the cars, and went and shot this at a park about 20 minutes away from the parking lot, knowing that it was going to be overcast, so I could get away with shooting in the direction of the sun, even though I shot essentially right here. The sun is camera right. So now this is important, because if the sun's camera right, you should make your composite have the sun be in the relation to the same section. But since it's overcast, we can get away with a little bit more. So I knew the sun was going to probably set around back here, but if I got there before the sun was peeking through, it would essentially line up. So we dropped that sky in. Another important thing here is I had the camera on a tripod, and I measured the height of the tripod so that when I was out at the location, I put the tripod essentially at the same height as when I was shooting the cars. And then I kind of just eyeballed the horizon of my car photo, and then tried to eyeball it for the horizon of the background that I was going to be taking, so that they match up. And that's what I meant in the beginning too. It's nice when you know you're going to do a composite, because you can go out and shoot those 2 layers almost identically at the same horizon, and that makes the perspective and the visual test a lot easier when you're going to put these 2 in. Also, another thing I think I missed on talking to you guys about was right here, right there. So when I did my final cleaning layer of some of the hood of the car, the rim of the orange Carrera, I specifically shot it in this parking lot because I had this curb here with this bit of grass here, grass over here, another curb here, and that I could easily select this piece of grass and curb and put it in the middle here, because this is an entrance to the dealership. So I knew that I was going to take this and put it there. Since I didn't have a lot of space between the 2 cars, I could probably trick the eye and get a curb there, right? So that is this from over there. But then I took like a black brush and made some different shadows so that there was not too much of a, repetitiveness if somebody, looked between the 2. Okay, back to the background. So the background gets dropped in, and now it's a lot of background work, right? So I'm going to darken the water. The water was a little bit too bright. I put a layer out there, darken the water. And now when you're doing something like this, everything's real easy, right? Because you're going to say, how are you darkening the water without darkening the cars? Well, I already have, all my layers, so I could select the car and then invert the selection so I'm not editing over the car. And then I can do the same thing because I have my, the Miami Blue 911 selection already as well. So now from here on out, it's actually pretty quick edits, believe it or not. So now there's a lot of little micro adjustments to like the contrast of the windows. You can see here that right when I drop the car in, we have power lines still in the windows. We have, just you could get away with something like this because there's trees in the image. You can get away with the reflection there, but like the power lines don't make sense. It's a little too faded compared to the darks in the back of the image, and that's where you need to start, kind of fine tweaking this to make it look believable. So here we go. We're going to start darkening things up. There's the sky getting a little bit more dramatic. And then here's a very subtle shift. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see this, but so this was the darkening, and then this is a little bit of warm toning going in, right? Just to the background. I add a little bit of warm tones to make it, you know, just to have, it was a little too desaturated back there for me. You know, for it to be this epic of a sky, I wanted there to be a warm tone hinting through it. So there's a little bit of the warmer tone, and then this is me going, basically taking an S curve on my, you know, RGB curves here, making it dramatic, but then layer masking in with a brush. I want it to only affect this section, and I want it to only affect up here a little bit and right here. I'm basically like burning with the curve tool here to just touch a few of these areas, because over here, right here in this big dark spot, I already liked how dark that was at that moment in the edit. So then here I'm going back to the windows, darken them up a little bit. And again, too, like, some of these reflections here work really well because, like, this is a sky from the exact same day. So you can get away with some of these rim reflections and stuff because, you know, you shot it on the exact same day. Now, when you're shooting composite and it's a totally different day, you're going to have a lot more work cut out for you to kind of make that look believable, or to take you know, a copy of a section here and reflect it into the windows and whatnot. But that's a whole nother ball game. So then we got to this point, and we still aren't perfect on the windows, but we'll get there. We'll get there. So now I'm going to add to the atmosphere a little bit. These next couple layers are me adding in smoke, just to kind of create a mood coming off this little, you know, pond here. Also, it helps me kind of, you know, I'll let the smoke come through here a little bit, come over the car. You can see how it's affecting the car here a little bit. And that's helping me tie in the atmosphere of the location and tying it into the car. So it takes the car to a little bit more of a believable state of saying, oh, maybe that car was actually there since, you know, the smoke is affecting with it. So then I added a little bit more contrast. I did it to the orange car as well. So I'll just click those on and off in a closer, a little bit more contrast. And then we went over here, a little bit more contrast. And you can really see, like, now when I'm doing that, it's because we have darks back here and we have darks up in the clouds. They somewhat need to be aligned with the darks over here in our image. So that's why I keep doing these micro adjustments for the darks and the lights to get it to really seem like it's, you know, at that location. So then another little adjustment to the shadows, just to the shadows of the orange car. So when I added the dark, the contrast and the S curve to the car, it started to make, you know, this section and this section a little too dark. So what I did was I just bumped it up a little bit. So then zoom out. I did an overall, you know, S curve to the entire image. This is a little too bright, a little too flat. Then I did it just to the floor again, just to make things a little bit more dramatic. And then we're getting there. A little bit of darkness. Now I'm back to the windows. And mind you, this is a shot from, like, I can't remember when I took this shot. 2017. It's when the 2017 911 Carrera came out. They were practically right off the truck. So I'd say nowadays my work is, this was the early stages of me, like, putting things in folders. My new composite work is a lot more organized, where the windows are under a Windows folder. And I suggest you guys, when you're getting into this heavy of a complex composite, definitely use folders, definitely keep organized, because you're going to want to go back and change this little thing. And if you're not organized, it's going to take you like an hour to figure out what the heck that's affecting that layer. So this is a little bit more unorganized, but my later work is much more organized. So now we're back into the window here, and I'll zoom in here on the orange car to show you the difference. You can just see that it's a little hazy here, so then we darken it some more. And then the rear window and the roof line. And then I do another hue and saturation. Again, I don't know if you guys are able to see this, but you'll see the car gets a bit more orange. I basically brought that file in from the shoot that Porsche shot of this car, and I realized that the car was not orange enough. So I basically darkened it and made the orange kind of stick out more as almost like a blood orange. At least with this location here. So then this was my kind of like a light haze. I did 2 of them. I did one up there, and then I did one down here. Again, letting it kind of spill on my cars here, you'll see that it affects the windshield here. Right here. Affects that windshield right there, right? And again, to help kind of wrap it in location, and because there's light coming from back there, and I wanted to make that a little bit more dramatic and kind of create those colors like they're coming from behind this massive cloud. And then from there, a lot of micro adjusting. And then there's a little bit of a wheel bump again. I figured that the wheels needed to be a little bit brighter, and then this grill here gets a little bit brighter. Again, so during the whole build of this, a lot of little adjustments to kind of get it exactly where it needs to be. Then here's one of the final cleanup layers, going in and cleaning up a lot of the ground. I'll click on and off, zoomed in. So you can see I'm cleaning up under the ground. Also, this didn't make sense. I'm in a little bit of a darker sky now, and this was more of a 2 o'clock, overcast sky. So I needed to darken that up a little bit. It was kind of sticking out as incorrect lighting back there. And I do that across really the whole image. Start getting rid of it under here. All these little imperfections in the ground are getting cloned out. Same thing over here. All the light hits on the car. I wanted it to seem a little bit more natural instead of strobed. So I photoshopped all these little light glares and light hits out. And sometimes that could be a style thing too. But since there's, not really a sun or anything, I didn't want it to 100% seem strobed. So I didn't want those layers. I didn't want those little light hits to be there. So then a little bit more window work. You can see that I went in here and I said that's a little too bright. Darkened it up a little bit. Same thing over here. You can see the back window there. It should have been a little darker, so it goes darker. And then we're getting to more window work. So pretty much I wasn't happy with this window. This one was a little too hazy. This one was, from the get-go I was pretty happy with how that lined up and how that looked. I think you can see too in one of these layers, taking the windows power lines out, you can see that there's no more power lines up in those windows. No more power lines kind of going across the seat there or anything. Then a little bit more hue and saturation. Again, a little adjustment. More, this is kind of like a burn and dodge. Just to kind of take your eye, I did it right down here, in the middle a little bit, just to kind of close the eye in on the 2 cars there. And then we got the license plate. I didn't want to leave it to be a blank license plate, so put in a little black layer there and the Porsche logo. And that is it. So that takes us to this point where we were able to show off to people this car in 2 different color types, even though we only have 1 car, and I wasn't able to take the car out that day off the lot to a location like this. Mind you that like at this location where I'm standing is almost right up to the water there. It's you would never be able to get a car in this location. So that's kind of like why I got into composite photography, because I was seeing these locations and I was seeing things that weren't possible for me to shoot a car. Maybe I could shoot a person there or something, but I wanted to get cars in these locations, and that's what ultimately made me start scratching the itch of getting into composite photography and getting into the more the commercial side, so you can just create whatever's on your mind, essentially. And that's where my work kind of started to go, and this would be maybe like one of the first big composites I'd say that I did. And that is the final image. So yeah, to wrap things up a little bit, I really appreciate Mo giving me his channel to show you guys this, and hopefully I can put a couple more of these together to maybe do this again with you guys with some of the newer work and some of the newer organization of what I'm doing today. But yeah, this is the final image, and again, a couple spots you can reach me at is at Evo-g on my Instagram page, or my website www.evogphotography.com, and there you can see automotive details, lifestyles and portraits, products. I do a little bit of videos and blog work on there. And then I also have a section where you can maybe contact me if you have any questions on some of the latest stuff. I will say that DMing on Instagram is probably the best way to get a hold of me. It's kind of where I'm the most active. So yeah, if you guys want to head over there if you got any questions, or just ask Mo some questions here on the comments below, and I'll kind of try to get after the questions with him. And yeah, so this has been awesome. I appreciate you guys for checking me out, and thanks again, Mo, for giving me the opportunity.
Evano, it was a pleasure having you on my YouTube channel, and I can't wait to have another collaboration with you in the future. We've reached to the end of this video. Now, if you have any questions, please leave me a comment in the comment section below. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, subscribe to this awesome YouTube channel, and I'll see you in the next video.